You're listening to Life Conversations with Senior Helpers, where expert advice and real-life experiences offer support for every step of the aging journey. Because aging isn't just a stage of life, it's a conversation worth having. You're listening to Life Conversations with Senior Helpers, where expert advice and real-life experiences offer support for every step of the aging journey. Because aging isn't just a stage of life, it's a conversation worth having. Welcome to part 2 of our life conversation with Bob Nations, author of Navigating the Art of Aging. Enjoy.
And Bob, one of the things that I'm sitting here getting teary-eyed as well. I swear, if somebody is listening to this and you're able to listen to it without having any feeling as you listen to Bob share his passion, and I mean, we've just heard 2 stories out of a book of stories, and I'm sure hundreds of other stories that aren't even in the book. But one of the things I was thinking about that is there's a statistic out there that when it comes to hospice, that when people ask, when you're younger, where would you want to pass away? When inevitably we're all going to face that. And 70 to 80% of people, maybe more, say that they want to pass away at home.
Absolutely.
The sad truth and reality is that 70 to 80% of people end up passing away in the hospital or in a rehab facility. Yeah. And so hearing these stories, I also, from a care standpoint, from people that provide care to seniors, there are so many times that I wish we had, and this, Christina, could be a whole nother episode on hospice, but I wish that people would respect even the wishes of their loved ones, to help them to achieve that. Inevitably, we're going to get to that point where we pass away, and you're being an advocate. You are helping people to accomplish, even in their final days. I mean, sitting there by somebody's bedside, crying with them, saying, nobody's ever cried for me before. I mean, my gosh, I have no words.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's really true.
Well, that's one of the rewarding parts. I know this is going to sound crazy. One of my great rewards is to be able to deliver what people have said they wanted, and me to be able to make it happen for them is really important to me, and that's why I get such a reward for what I do as being in this industry, for sure.
At Senior Helpers, we've started more and more of our offices are become age-friendly care certified. And that big question, what matters most? I think, Bob, and we ask that question to our clients, our families, what matters most? And I think you've been doing that probably longer than anybody else has been doing it before even age-friendly care became a thing. You actually are
way before, yeah.
Well, it's because it's important to me. One of the things that I ask in the beginning of an assessment, and I've always done it, what is your goal here? What is it you want to get done?
Yeah.
And how can I help you do that? And and it's not a story in my book, but I had a man tell me one day that he had cancer, and he knew that his days were numbered. And I said, what is it you want to do? And he goes, I want to take my family to this resort near the ocean, and I want to spend one last time with them at this resort. And damned if we didn't get it done for him. I mean, it was really cool. And that was really early on. And I just saw his son this weekend, and he always remembers that conversation and how we worked together to help that man get to the beach. Yeah, it was really cool.
So, Bob, another one of my favorite stories was about Mr. B.
Yeah, that was an interesting one too, because he was one that we had started care with, and I hadn't actually been involved at all until one day my partner did more of the financial stuff, and he called me and he said, hey, can you go up and check on this Mr. B because he's not paying his invoices? And I went up, and this man lived in a nice little low-income apartment complex and was, just kind of didn't have a lot going on in his life. He just kind of sat there, and we'd had a really great caregiver going to see him. And so as I started diving into it, discovered that he had worked in the wine industry. Was I can't think of his job, but he was in the winery industry, but not a high profile winery job. It was a very down in the trenches, cleaning out vats and things. But he had received a pension back in the day when the wine industry had a pension, so he had an okay income. He had moved here from Idaho. Apparently, his family were potato farmers, and moved here because his family had rejected him. In fact, the story goes that he told me at one point in time his mother tried to smother him with a pillow, which made me really sad. But anyway, that's not my story. That's his story. But anyway, so I kind of moved in and started kind of managing his life, and found out that one of the things that I found out that he had bought a car, and it was sitting out on the street. And not only was he not paying us, but he wasn't making his car payment. So I grabbed the car payment, took it to the office, handed it to Kevin, and said, "Hey, you need to make these payments." And so he started making the payments, and we used his car to transport him. Eventually, as time goes on, of course, he gets, his health starts to fail. And at one point in time, I had him in the hospital, and I knew it was due to him for him to come home. But I was really concerned about his living arrangement, because it wasn't a very hygienic, very clean environment. He had been a smoker a long time, and his walls were all yellow, and it just reeked of smoke. And so a couple of days before he was scheduled to come home, I got a U-Haul truck and went and cleaned out his whole apartment. I actually scrubbed the walls down with Clorox cleaner. Got him a lift chair from a nonprofit that I work with. Got him a hospital bed, because he wasn't coming home and was entitled, because he didn't really have Medicare, wasn't entitled to all those benefits you get. So I needed to do something outside of that. So I got him a hospital bed, got him a lift chair, got him all set up in his home, and got him a more cleansy environment, so it wasn't actually making him sick, because that was really kind of my concern.
Right.
And again, he had no family, so I kind of became his surrogate son as well, and managed him through all the trials and tribulations. Eventually, he gets to a point where I moving to an assisted living, I'm sorry. One of the things that I did was also that he had never celebrated his birthday before with anybody. And so he and I went out to breakfast one morning, and I'll never forget getting him out of the car, because he wasn't really ambulatory, getting him out of the car. And unfortunately, he had a urine bag, and it got twisted around, and we had to figure out how to get him out of the car and not create a problem. But got him into breakfast. We had a really nice breakfast and a really nice time. And eventually moving into an assisted living. And then they called me one day, sadly, and said that he had got up and had breakfast and was sitting in the chair and passed away. So I felt good about the fact that I had him, did everything I could to set him up for success in a clean environment, and eventually got him to an assisted living place that we could pay for. And the sad part to me was, in the end, he had arranged for a pine box and it's called a Potter barrier, where they would put him in an unmarked grave, and I couldn't have that. So I actually worked with a funeral home to have a marker put, and I stood by as they lowered it in the ground and all that fun stuff. But I was the only one. So again, it was an opportunity for me to bond with this man and really help him through the last years of his life and make it as meaningful as I possibly could. The crazy catch-up story here is, remember, I was paying for his car, so we had eventually paid off his car. And I didn't know what to do, because I had a car in another man's name who's passed away. So through the work that I had done in the community, I knew the public guardian pretty well, and I called him and said, "Hey, I have this problem, and I have this man's car that we've been using for care with him, and I've been paying the payments, and it's paid off now, and it's in his name, and he's no longer alive. He has no beneficiary. So what do I do?" And so he walked me through how to transfer his car over to the company name. It for years drove around with senior helpers in the windows in honor of him. We nicknamed the car his name, and so that's how we always referred to him. So it was a really special thing for me, because even when I drove it, I always had a thought about Mr. B and the time he and I'd spent together, and it was kind of a cool honorary thing to have his car in our portfolio of wrap cars, as you would call them. So
So great. Great stories. Really great stories. I love it. It's so interesting. I think about, people, all of our listeners out there, that we all have little stories like that, right? Where we've been, it's a neighbor, a friend of our family, or somebody that you've been impactful like that too. And it's just, I think I'm hearing the story obviously from your perspective, but could you imagine hearing it from the client's perspective? Like, how,
Oh yeah.
let me tell you about Bob, right?
Right, right, right.
It may-
Well, that's the thing, Christina. I think you and I grew up in a time where people helped their neighbors. And I think it's a lot of where I come from is,
Mhm.
when my neighbor needs something, I tend to want to be there for them. And I think that has extended to the work that I do at Senior Helpers.
Yeah,
Everybody's my neighbor on some level, right? Because that's
exactly.
kind of the mentality that I have and the way I was brought up.
So there's some advice you give at the end of the book, for, I think, 4 pillars. Tell me a little bit about that. I found that kind of intriguing. I was like, yeah, this is simple advice, but good advice.
Well, that was an evolving thing that happened with me when I first started the business. As you know, we do meal prep for people in their homes, and I got to think of, well, how can I know that my caregivers know how to meal prep? So I started this whole program of trying to educate caregivers on how to cook, and there was a whole long thing about. I used the commercial kitchen at Whole Foods and did some caregiver cuisine training at Whole Foods. And then I did a radio interview one day, and it was about how to do things to improve your memory capabilities. And of course, I had lots of things that I had been exposed to
Hmm.
from exercise kinds of things. And so I started putting together this whole program that I called the 4 pillars. And the 4 pillars dealt with what I feel like are, and I've added a fifth one now, but the 4 pillars of really how to live longevity and live a good life. And those are to eat right, so we called it Let's Eat. Let's think. Use your brain for some kind of stimulating activity every day. Move your body, and it happens to be simply sitting in your chair and moving your arms in the air. And then one of the key ones that I thought that always got missed, even in this group, was the socialization. How important
Hmm.
socialization is. So what I did was I created a whole marketing strategy around those 4 things that I took out to the community. So I did workshops all over the community
Oh
where
my
I would,
God.
in some cases, make meals for people and show them how easy it was to make a meal in 10 minutes that not only was good tasting, but it was affordable, it was easy to make, tasted good, but it was also geared toward the older population because, as you know, our diet changes as we grow older, and I did a lot
Mhm.
of research on that regard. So I would do part of my hour talking about food and why different food was important and why different colors are important. But then I'd segue my discussion into brain stimulation, where we'd play a couple of games and why those things were important. One of my favorite games that I talk about all the time is the ABC game, where you can take a subject, create a sheet of paper with the letters of the alphabet down the left hand side, and let's just say girls' names. You go through and you find a girl's name that goes with every letter of the alphabet. It becomes very mind stimulating, very easy to do anywhere you can. And then moving your body. I mean, people get hung up in the fact, oh, I can't go to the
Yeah.
gym. Well, you don't need to go to the gym, right? You just
Mm-mm.
need to walk around your house, walk around the block, sit in your recliners. You're watching TV. Stretch your arms, stand up 10 times. There's some variations. One of the things I love to tell people is when I go shopping, I go into a parking lot that has a Target, a Whole Foods, and a Trader Joe's. And so as I go to each one of those stores, I return the shopping cart back to the store before I go to the next store, and I do that 3 different times, and it increases my steps all the time. So that was one of the easy things I talked about. And then socialization. I think this is
Mhm.
one of the things that get missed a lot because we tend to start isolating as we grow older based on the fact that our health's declining, our ability, our memories are declining, and we start isolating more. And I think it's really important, and it's just the opposite of what we need to do. We need to change that, and we need to reach out, whether it's talking to somebody on the phone or going to lunch with friends or whatever the case may be. So that became a premise of my whole company. And so the beautiful thing is all of those things turned into part of my care plan. So when I would go do an assessment and I determined this person was starting to show memory loss, I would put in the care plan binder a number of games, and then I would tell the caregiver, this is what part of my expectation is, that you play games with them all the time. Or here's some menu items, because when I did the food program, I actually developed menus that I would hand out to people, and I would put those in the care plan binders because they were easy meals to make for just about
Yeah.
anybody, somebody who couldn't cook. I would put in exercises, and then, just the fact that the caregiver sat with the client and played a game, that was social interaction on its own. So that had a lot to do with that social interaction. Now in my later years now, I talk a little bit more about spirituality because I think it's an
Mhm.
important fifth component. So I've
Mhm.
changed to make it more of a 5 pillar thing. But I for years I did all kinds of work around my 4 pillars, and I think it's really important as we grow older to practice all 5 of those 5 pillars.
Yeah, I love how you incorporated into the care staff that, because that's really where it starts. If we can get our care staff thinking in that direction and they know how important it is being for working with senior helpers, then they can get out there and then begin to like share that, get them going, get it going with their own clients.
Well, again, I incorporated it in everything I did. It was really interesting because it was a marketing thing for me, but it was also a community education thing. It
Hmm.
became part of my care plans. But then I went as far as when we would do trade shows, my giveaway had to be something that was conducive to that. So we found these little baskets that look like sink strainers. They're
Okay.
actually can strainers. So you put it on a can and you can dump the can upside down and strain all the
Oh
juice
yeah.
off, which gets a lot of the sodium off. And so I would take those to be as a giveaway, and people would always come over to me and go, "What is this?" And they'd pick it up and turn it over, and I would say, "Well, what do you think it is?" And so it created this whole dialogue, but it sent a message of who we were, engaged my conversation around healthy eating and why that was
Mhm.
important, and so it just became an all encompassing thing for my business for quite a long time.
I love it. It's great. Oh well, I live by those now 5 pillars. I think they're important. So now that I've turned 60, I'm 100% 5 pillar.
Yeah, so am I. So am I. David, you need to listen to us, wise people.
So, Bob,
Um,
I'm curious. A lot of our listeners are, and we recently had our national conference at Senior Helpers, and some interesting changes that we've seen over the last few years is previously when somebody was starting to look for senior care or care for a loved one, it was most oftenly the daughter, sometimes the oldest daughter, or it was just a daughter that was involved in seeking care. They were the one that was kind of tasked with finding care or uh, arranging care for their loved one as they aged, as they needed more assistance. And interestingly, there's been more of a shift now to where it's almost 50-50. It
Yeah.
used to be really primarily the daughter, but now the sons, way to go, sons, are catching up a little bit, or a lot of it. It's almost 50-50. I think it was like 48-46 or something now.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
really
It's pretty
almost
balanced.
there.
It's pretty
Uh,
balanced. Yeah.
but for those that are listening, that we've shared some amazing stories of the benefits that you've had with those in your care. But for anybody that's listening, that's thinking about care for a loved one or has started care for a loved one, and they're listening for that reason. Do you have any thoughts or advice? I know I'm asking a very general question here, but just what comes to mind when you think about those family caregivers and looking for or already caring for their loved one?
Well, that's a big question, David. We could
It
spend
is.
probably a
It's a
whole
broad
podcast
question.
talking about this. That's a big question because it comes down to when it's the spouse that's looking for care for their loved one. Sometimes it's really hard for them to give up because they feel like they're having to give up. They're doing something wrong by bringing somebody in. They feel like they failed them. And you got to understand, you can't be a hero because, as we know statistically, the spouse starts to decline sometimes even more than the client because they become so burned out. So it's really important for the spouse to get some kind of respite, whether it's someone coming in the home and letting them go off and do something else, or if it's something that so those mom generally and it's 50-50 here too, but I just always use the example of generally the mom is taking care of the dad, and
mhm.
children say, "Oh, well, mom's taking care of him." Well, you got to realize that mom needs to be taken care of too, because, they're generally about the same age or pretty close to the same age. And even though mom seems to be presenting a good face, she may be struggling as well and just hiding it. So that's really important. It's really important in my opinion, to hire an agency, because when you hire private caregivers, it can be problematic. Yeah, you think you're saving money and cutting corners, but the truth of the matter is sometimes it comes back to haunt you. Because I just had an inquiry last night, actually, from a friend of mine who wanted me to talk to someone because they had hired privately, and the private caregivers were now coming after them legally because they hadn't paid their wages properly based on California law in this case. And it's really a sad story, because they thought they were saving money. In the end, it's going to cost them more money, because this couple who was providing 24-hour care. So it's really sad. And the other thing that most people don't realize is that workman's comp, I mean, if a private caregiver gets hurt in your home, they're entitled to come after you for their medical related expenses. I had this happen really early in my life, where a family hired a caregiver and the caregiver fell on the driveway and hit her head and cracked open her head. And she came after that family for medical expenses. So it's just, yes, I understand, saving money, but in the end, be safe. Be safe. It's your mom or your dad. You need to make sure you get the best possible care. And not to do a commercial for Senior Helpers, is here at Senior Helpers, we do the best possible job from the training of our caregivers and making sure our caregivers know what to do and when to do things, to our life profile assessment tool that really kind of helps establish where your mom or your dad happen to be today and how we can improve upon that with the way life profile works. And then, of course, at my agency, we use AI technology to have an overall umbrella for our clients so that we can know what's going in the home even when no one's there, which provides really safety for me, because I could sit here again and tell lots of stories about how some of our technology has saved lives. I had a lady that fell on the floor one day, and her apartment was 98 degrees, and she was laying on the floor, and no one would have known about it for hours if we hadn't been notified by our technology. So there's lots of things, and don't be cheap. I mean, you don't want to use Walmart to take care of your mom, right? You want to use the Nordstrom of care for your mom. So that's what I tell people all the time. Your mom raised you and invested a lot of time in you, and you should be investing in her as well. So that's what I like to tell people. If you think I'm Walmart, then you've got the wrong agency, because I provide the best possible care for your mom. So
that's great. Well, I'm going to ask the question: how do we find this book?
It's on Amazon.com. And so you just go to Amazon.com and type in Navigating the Art of Aging, or you can go to Barnes & Noble as well. Barnes & Noble has it online as well.
Yeah, and we'll provide a link to this podcast so that if people want to purchase it, they're able to do that.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Oh, it was. Thank you so much, Bob, for joining. Oh my gosh, your story is always
that you included me. I feel like I feel honored that you called and wanted to do this, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And we're just scratching the surface. We could talk for hours about all your stories. So thank you so much for
of course
today. And yeah.
Thank you.
All right. See you all soon.
All right. We'll see you all in our next episode of Life Conversations. Take care.
This has been Life Conversations with Senior Helpers. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the show, leave us a positive review on your favorite streaming platform, and share it with someone who may benefit. It helps us grow and helps us continue sharing expert guidance and real support for aging well. To learn more about Senior Helpers and how we help older adults live independently and safely at home, visit seniorhelpers.com.